Who is on the line?
Dale Nations.
And President Frank Thorwald.
Bill Fire Robin.
We have a quorum. Next, is there any conflicts of interest? Hearing none, we'll move forward. Dennis, would you make a quick introduction of the what's going on with the additional person?
Okay, so we're going to have a transition in terms of help in taking minutes. Madeline Greenbaum has been doing it. Congratulations to Madeline, but she's taken a job as an inspector within the Facilities Emissions Control section for ADQ, and she'll be transitioning to that and transitioning out of her role here. So Tanya Cook will be taking over Madeline's position to take the minutes, write up the minutes, and a few other ancillary things related to organizing the meetings. And I just wanted everybody to be introduced to these two folks. So that's it.
Thank you. Welcome, Tanya. Moving on, discussion and consideration of possible vote by the Commission on the minutes for April 12th, 2019, rare earth public hearing, excuse me. Is there any recommended changes in this? Is there a motion to approve that meeting minutes?
So moved. From Bill.
Second?
Bill, second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing that, the April 12th rare earth public hearing meeting minutes are approved. April 12th, 2009 public meeting minutes. Are there any changes that are needed? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve? I move that we approve the April 12th public meeting minutes. Do I hear a second?
Second, Bill.
We have a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Moving on to item 3, Enterprise Products of Mana LPG facility. Dennis, do you want to?
Okay, so Enterprise Products is here, represented by Mark Thompson, Director of Underground Storage Technology for Enterprise Products, a nationwide company that stores LPG and I guess other gases underground throughout the United States. And they have a facility at Adamana, which is an isolated location south of Interstate 40 in southern Apache County. He's here to request 3 things from the Commission, approval for 3 things. A waiver of the workover frequency. Previously, they've been doing workovers of any wells that they conduct pressure testing or sonar testing, MIT as it were. And he's requested a waiver to a 10-year cycle for workovers and keep the MIT at 5 years. And there's going to be some need for approval for shut-in of 2 cavern wells, which he's going to make a presentation on to explain the details of that. And I guess there's a request for pressure testing in the C3 cavern as well. So I hope that's enough background. Mr. Thompson, I'll just turn it over to you.
Mr. Thomas, could you come up and sit right here and give us your presentation, please? Welcome.
Thank you. Are you driving?
Yeah, I'm driving.
Okay.
Next slide.
Next slide, please. Again, my name's Mark Thompson. I'm the technical director basically for underground storage and salt caverns and hard rock mine caverns around the United States for Enterprise Products. A little bit about the company. We're a large midstream company. We don't drill and produce oil and gas. We don't deliver it to the end user. We're strictly a midstream group. We have a bit over 40,000 miles of pipelines, 260 million barrels of underground storage capabilities. So we're the largest underground storage company volume-wise in the United States. We do store a bit of natural gas, but not much. A lot of processing plants scattered around the nation, fractionators where we, once the Y grades are stripped out of the gas, it's broken down into the propane, ethane, butanes, different things like that. And then also we are quite a large shipping group out of our export terminals out in the Houston Ship Channel mainly, or in the Texas Gulf Coast. So that's about it. Next slide, please. Give you a little bit of an overview of our Adamant underground storage facility, the cavern and facility layout, to give you a little background about the request that we're making today. As Dennis alluded to, we are going to propose to move to a 10-year workover interval, and we have some supporting documentation and other things that have been sent via email, and we have a few slides on that. And then the shut-in or temporary abandonment of 2 caverns out there at our Adamant facility, and we'll go through those as the presentation moves forward. All right, so this is our underground storage facility. This is Holbrook, if y'all are familiar with that, and we're just about 15 miles east of Holbrook, and that would be our facility along that rail spur or rail line there. Almost all of the product all of it does comes from rail, in and out. So everything is railed in and out. We do a lot of, I think they do over 8,000 rail cars a year out there, so it's a lot. Next slide, please. Here's a Google Earth view. You come off of Highway 40 and down. This is our brine impoundments here, and this is the facility. Again, you can see the rail. It's difficult to see on this illustration, but I have some better ones that show these little open spots here and here and here. Those are the actual wellheads. We have 11 wells out there. There were 12, but one was not ever developed. Next one, please. This is a little bit better look at it. You can see the railroad here, and then we have a row of wells along that railroad, and then scattered out just north of there. Out there, the top of the salt is somewhere between 830 and 910 feet, and our submitted casings, or our final submitted casings, are in at somewhere between 890 and 946 feet. And out of all of the 11 that are developed, we have about 2.3 million barrels of usable space out there. Next one, please. When we assumed this facility, we bought it from Feral Gas back in 2002 or 3, 4, somewhere along in there. We did a full-blown upgrade of all of the wellheads, all of the service facilities. This would be a typical wellhead out there. You have your final cemented casing, your product casing here. You have an outlet with an ESD valve, an emergency shutdown valve. Product goes in and out through here and down. Brine comes up out of the hanging string and out. There is an ESD valve there as well. And then we have a valve up there on top that we can access the well, and we can actually run things through the hanging casing that goes down into the cavern interval. All of the controls and everything are set up here. We can monitor flow. We do have some fairly good flow measurement on these things, so that we'll know. We want to know how much we have in and out. Next, please. Workover interval. Y'all may, or I believe y'all have seen this from planes, and that's one of the reasons I'm here. Mr. Lesko and I are good friends, and so we've talked about the issues here. Current workover interval has always been 5 years out there. It's been assumed to be that. And during those workovers, we did casing inspections with a caliper log and some sort of a magnetic flux leakage tool or ultrasonic tool where you actually image the casing inside and out. So you determine the wall loss or the amount of steel that's left. You can also see if the pitting or corrosion emanates from the inside or the outside. And so it's a nice tool. We use it across the country for all of our wells. We'd also run a density log to make sure that we didn't have any washouts of the salt up above the end of our cemented casings. And then we would do a sonar survey of the cavern interval. And then finally a mechanical integrity test. Those mechanical integrity tests are for the states that have primacy, and for those that don't, it's a US EPA requirement. We do them every 5 years on every well, on every underground injection well. You have to do them. Some are actually on 1 year intervals, but those are typically saltwater disposal wells, not storage caverns. What we're proposing to do is to move this workover interval to 10 years. What we can do, and we would propose to do, we will still have to do the mechanical integrity test. That doesn't go away ever. And we would also run a sonar survey through pipe just to see if we had any issues. You can do vertical shots, not up shots, but you can also see if there's some rubble in the bottom or things that have happened in there. And so it gives us a good idea of what to look for and what's out there. Doing this reduces the number of rig events we have with these wells. When you're working on 5 or 6 a year, and usually we do them over a 2-year period, you put a lot of risk in. Every time you put a rig out there, you have risk, and so it would reduce that. We believe it'd be quite safe to do that. We've done a number of these casing inspection logs. Next slide, please. And this is just a table that we keep up with. We do this for all of our caverns, and what it is the year, the type of log that was run, and the results. And this is the percentage of wall loss. You can see the ones in yellow. We actually found this early on. We repaired it. This cavern here, cavern 8, we found this the very first time we logged it, and we went ahead and ran a liner in that one. We felt it was a manufacturing defect. It was probably damage was done during the installation phase, and so we didn't really want to patch it, so we just went ahead and ran a liner in it. As you can see, there's nothing after that. Everything is very, very good. This one was right at the surface, just below the air-soil interface. All of that's been taken care of. We see no progression. We see absolutely nothing really going on out there. There's no corrosion. We're not in an environment. The soil out there is not terribly corrosive on the external side, and then internally we have product in, and so there's no oxygen. There's really no mechanism for corrosion or pitting or anything. And so we believe we have a really good background on this now. We have at least 3 logs, so we've done at least 3 of these inspections, so we have more than just a single data point. The next slide, please. And then also, you can just see on the growth patterns out there, they're pretty consistent. Just a little less than 1% a year, which is pretty consistent, pretty common with all of our other facilities around the country. You can't have fully saturated brine, or then you end up with a pond full of salt because it starts to precipitate and fall out. So you have to have a little bit of fresh water in there and a little bit of water to help dilute it, and so that you get just a tiny bit of growth over time. And so that's basically it. I've included a number of I think I included some of the casing inspection logs and the emails that I sent to Mr. Turner. But we feel it very safe to move this 10-year interval. It saves money and it also reduces risk.
Any questions?
Quick question. You indicated the mechanical integrity test. You're trying to go from 5 years to 10 years. You also mentioned you have to do it for EPA. How often do you have to do it for EPA?
Well, it's a 5-year test. The mechanical integrity test would still be done every 5 years. And that's an EPA, US EPA requirement.
Just wanted to straighten that out. Thank you.
No, that's...
So you can remain every 5 years on the MIT?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had a couple questions.
Go ahead.
One of them, I guess, Rick's pretty much answered, but I just want to clarify. So on this slide here, you're saying 5-year interval will be the MIT and the sonar survey also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can run it through the hanging string without pulling the hanging string. Technology allows us to do that.
Yeah, sonar technology is advanced to where you can see through a couple of different casings, I guess.
We only have a single hanging string there, a hanging casing, and so we can see through that. We do it a lot.
Yeah.
You can actually see through 2 casings if they're the right size and wall thickness.
So when you say here on the slide, sonar survey open hole, that's when you're doing the work over and pulling the casing?
That's when you pull the pipe out. That gives you an opportunity. The sonar tool, as it is, you take horizontal shots. You stop, you ping, and you get put a sonic wave, and you get a rebound, and it's all about the timing. And that tool has the capabilities, though it's got an electronic motor, you can tilt it up or down. And so you can either take up shots of the roof area to see if you've had any, abnormal development up there, and you can also tilt it and look down to see if there's any rubble on the floor of the cavern. We don't like to run it all the way into the floor and bounce it off the dirt down there. It's a pretty sensitive tool, so you maybe set up 10 feet off bottom, 15 feet off bottom, and shoot down. And so it's pretty cool tool.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any other questions with regard to their proposal on the workover frequency? Any discussion?
I'm ready with the motion in case there are no more questions.
Go ahead, Dale.
I move to approve the 10-year workover cycles for all 11 enterprise wells at Adamana LPG facility.
Is there any discussion on his motion? Is there a second?
Second, Bill.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Moving on to the second item, a brief history and justification for the approval of shut-in status for Caravan Wells C3 and C5. Dennis, do you want to?
Well, I'll turn that over to Mr. Thompson. They need the Commission's approval to shut in 2 caverns, and he submitted the demonstration of beneficial use. I forwarded a summary of that to the Commissioners in the form of the sundry notice. I think he meets the requirements in Section 125 of the rule in regards to that, 125A I think it is. But you may have some further comments as to why you want to shut that
Well,
stuff in.
I would love to go through the presentation and show, give you a better idea of what's going on and why we're asking what we're asking.
Mr. Thompson, proceed.
Next slide.
Next
please.
slide, okay.
Okay, so our cavern C3, when we first assumed this facility and did our initial wellhead upgrades and all the other upgrades, we do a mechanical integrity test, full-blown open hole workover and all of that, and it passed the MIT. Now in 2011, when we emptied the cavern, there was a pressure loss that was observed. Some of that we had initially thought might be just due to some lighter brine or cold brine that had been introduced into the cavern, and it would take a bit for it to saturate and stabilize pressures. That never happened. The cavern did empty with no loss of product, so we weren't concerned that we had put any propane or into somewhere we couldn't get it. At that point, we went ahead and isolated the cavern so that no more product could enter in. We did some additional testing, actually another mechanical integrity test in 2011, and it indicated that the pressure loss was actually down in the cavern interval, not at the casing seat. And I'm going to show you in a minute kind of what a standard MIT looks like as far as where we place the test medium and all of that. Monitoring's continued since then. There's no change in the loss rate. It's about a 1 psi a day, so it's pretty low. And we mainly just continue to maintain positive cavern pressure. We have to put just a touch of brine in it occasionally to do that. If you go to the next slide, please. This is what a mechanical integrity test really looks like. We do them with nitrogen. Nitrogen will find the smallest leak that's out there. And so we actually inject nitrogen between the hanging casing and the cemented casing and get the brine and nitrogen interface below the cemented casing. That way we're testing the cement, the steel, and all of the surface casing, or surface equipment up top. If the interface were to move up, that would indicate that nitrogen is leaking out above us and that you have a leak back into a shallower zone. On this particular one, it got down into this really wide portion of the cavern and just stopped. It's leaking so slowly, it's almost impossible to see. It's such a slow thing. So if you'd go to the next one, Dennis, please. This is just a little graph here of the pressures. You can see they just go up and down about every 3 to 4 weeks. We have to put a barrel or two of brine in it. We don't want it to go to zero. We don't want to just sit there, and I'm going to explain a bit later why that is. The next slide, please. So that's cavern C3. We also have just recently noticed the same thing in our cavern C5. Again, the 2017 full workover MIT, it passed, but we noticed that during that MIT, we had a very, very slow pressure loss. Now this one's a bit slower than the other one. It's about a PSI a month. And it is slow. We believe it to be down in the cavern interval. The MIT passed. The interface was not moving up. So we actually have reduced the pressure on it We kept it at that MIT pressure for some time, and we've reduced the pressure just to limit any potential loss of brine into other strata out there. So if you'd go to the next one, please. And you can see that this is since January 2018. The blue is the brine pressure. It's gone from 82, it was down to about 70 or 68 in about a year and a half. It's a really, really slow leak. It's almost impossible to find that. We went ahead and bled the pressure down here just recently, and it's actually, I didn't update this slide, but it's actually flattened out. It's sitting there right now at this lower pressure. So we don't feel good about either cavern about putting product back in them. We're not in the business to lose product, and we don't know that we won't. And so it's not something we are proposing to do. If you could go to the next slide, Dennis, please. So right now, we don't believe permanent abandonment is an option. And I have a slide just after this showing why. Basically, you'll lose the hydrostatic head. And hydrostatic head, you have a foot of water exerts 0.433 psi for every foot of depth. And so you have this head on there that's exerting pressure, but it's also holding the cavern up. And if it were to go down and lose that head, we are afraid of some subsidence, possible sinkhole. So we really are requesting not to do that. All the product piping is isolated. There's no way the product can get back in there. We have continuous pressure monitoring. We're proposed to maintain a positive cavern pressure. And also, it's been a bit of time since we tested cavern C3 since 2011. So it would be my wish to retest it to confirm that it's down in the cavern interval and not anywhere else again. We don't believe it is. The pressures don't point to that. So we'd like to retest that. The next slide, please, Dennis. Again, this is when it's full of brine or anything, you can see it's 478 psi just at the cavern depth that you're pushing up. And so that's on the next slide, please, Dennis. That's on an area that's 150 feet across. And so if you remove that lift and that support, that's our fear, is that you might have some sort of a surface event attached to that. The next slide, please. Here's another view of it, a little closer of the caverns. As you can see, cavern 3 is right here, right adjacent to the railroads. Cavern 5 is right here. We have other caverns around it. And so again, our fear is that we'd have a sinkhole either right in the middle of our field or potentially right next to this railroad. And so that's the basis for our request.
Any questions?
I have a question, real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
It's my understanding, these were old salt caverns, correct?
Correct.
And again, I'm not a scientist, I'm an attorney. It's my understanding that salt caverns can self-repair over years. Is that a proper evaluation or not?
We have not had one to fix itself, no.
Oh, okay. Next question. You indicate that you have to, on a fairly regular basis, add brine to these
Just a touch.
to, I call it balance, but to basically ensure a proper support for the road.
Correct.
How often does that happen in C3?
Every 3 to 4 weeks.
And how often does it happen in C5?
We haven't had to add any yet.
One of the things you've asked for is temporarily abandoned status. And I want to read you something right from the statute, which says, an operator shall ensure that no work begins on a temporarily abandoned or shut-in well until approved by the commission.
Right.
Now, my concern is, and I'm explaining this to the commission members, is allowing you to go back and balance that, or to put brine every 3 to 4 weeks, at least as to C3, without taking that into consideration right now and coming to in order may cause a problem, because by statute, you can't re-enter a well and do anything until you come to the commission.
Right.
My suggestion is, in talking to the commission members, is that you somewhat allow Adamana and Enterprise the ability to balance C3 or to add brine to C3 every 3 to 4 weeks. And that would be the only way, or the only ability to touch or re-enter the well for the sole purpose of ensuring that you keep up this cavern integrity, so to speak. I'm doing that from a legal perspective of reading the rule. I'm looking forward to hearing what the members have to say.
I have a question. Is your salt interval, looking at the entire interval, is it sodium chloride, or do you have potash and other? Is it a mix of salts in that interval?
It's relatively all sodium chloride. The drilling records that we've been able to locate, which we don't have all of them. The potash layer is generally above the salt, just above it,
Okay.
and it's actually behind casing. And
Okay.
we don't see anything in the interval that would give us a smoking gun. It might go there. Now we do have Cavern 5 has a development right at the base of the cavern, a wing that's out there, and that could be, but we don't have records.
What do you mean by a development, a wing?
It's a wing that's developed in the salt. You can see it with the sonar survey.
Oh, you mean where the salt,
Correct.
the actual dissolution of the salt is?
It's a preferential development,
Yeah.
or wing as we call it.
Okay, I understand
That's
you now.
developed
Okay.
out, and we think that may be the case. It may be there. We checked all the adjacent caverns, so we don't see any pressure, similar pressure rises or decreases in any of the others, so it's
Yeah.
not leaking into another cavern.
Okay.
So we don't believe it. Well, we haven't seen it go up, so we don't believe it's leaking up behind the casing or through the casing. So that's our position, that it's leaking down in that cavern interval somewhere.
Yeah, and you don't have any, it's a pure salt interval, there's no Sheely intervals that,
There's not much. Those caverns are actually, well, you saw that one illustration. It's
Yeah.
not, Dennis, if you would go back one slide maybe. That's Cavern 3, I believe.
yeah,
And so it's not bad. Cavern 5 actually has a wing that's
That's
out
that
here.
wing out there, yeah.
It's at the base of the cavern. So it's hard to pick out. It's hard to know. This is a small leak, and it's difficult to find.
yeah.
But I did have another request to go back and test this cavern again to make certain, to reconfirm. And I did that with a separate sundry notice request.
Yeah.
Got a question for Dennis real quick. If you're leaking brine, is that an unpermitted discharge? Or not? APP, has it turned into an APP issue or not?
I would not interpret it as an EPP issue. I think that might be better asked of somebody at APP, but that never occurred to me that would be a discharge, an aquifer type thing.
Okay.
Discharge an aquifer. I have a few questions too.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dennis.
So, you indicated you thought there might be some feature out there that's like a sinkhole that might be exacerbating your problem with C3. I wondered, because of its proximity to the railroad, if just the vibration over time has agitated the thing enough that it's got a little crack and it resulted in a leak.
These are not deep caverns. They're relatively shallow in the cavern world, but that's a possibility. But they're deep enough. We have caverns that in Kansas that are only 600 feet, and I don't know if you're aware, they have a lot of earthquakes up there, and some in close proximity, but we haven't seen any significant issues from that. So I don't know. That's hard to
This is
answer.
where you're talking about?
In Kansas.
Microseismic events or earthquakes?
Earthquakes, up to about a 3.1.
And that doesn't seem to affect those caverns?
And the epicenter's within a mile of our facility.
Yeah.
Some of them within a quarter of a mile.
Okay, then I guess the railroad is.
But I don't know. That's a question it's a good thought. It's a good question.
It's
possible.
an academic
Yeah,
question.
we just don't want a sinkhole to form near that railroad. That would be catastrophic.
Another question. So Cavern 3, is this a cavern that you think will ever be capable of producing again?
I doubt it, unless we're able to come up with a way to heal this thing, to fix it, to
So do you
find the
think that
leak.
you might, if it's possible, do you think you might plug and abandon or do whatever? I mean, do you
we-
have to maintain this thing in perpetuity?
Maybe. that's possible. We have others in the country that, unfortunately, that's part of what we have to do. But there's also some thoughts about, we have one of our brine ponds is full of salt, and we've actually had some discussions about actually crushing and pumping that salt down hole to see if it would. There's some studies in the research studies going on inside the solution mining world that, or at least there's been some theory about it anyway, possible addition, and seeing if it would heal itself. Yeah.
I would, sorry to interrupt, Dennis, are you done?
I have another question. In regards to C5, then, do you feel that that's something you might go back to producing from eventually, or is it going to remain?
If the pressure flattened out, I would.
There's no way of knowing when or why it would.
I don't. And that's the problem, is in the cavern intervals, it's such a broad area, such a wide area, there's really no way to fix it.
So have you removed all the production paraphernalia, tubing or whatever, out of these 2 cavern wells?
Well, we would want to leave the hanging casings in so that you could protect that cemented casing. They have just some residual product or nitrogen that's in there to protect that casing, to keep any corrosion. If you put brine in it, it can sometimes be a bit of an issue, and so we would, we typically leave them with something in there other than brine. But no, it would have to demonstrate integrity, and then we would come back before the commission and request permission to go back and do a full-blown mechanical integrity test at storage pressure before we would ever even do anything. But getting my management convinced of it will take some doing. It's a fairly conservative group.
Well, Bill, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking on how you might maybe introducing I'm not sure if, just your mind plays with the idea of injecting some kind of maybe a supersaturated salt thing that might precipitate where it's, but those are just.
Well, our thoughts were more around putting rock salt in there as a support mechanism, more of a structure. Regardless if it leaks or not, if it's full of a solid rather than a liquid, then it will maintain the support.
Yeah, when you're drilling mineral holes and you're losing water, there's tricks you can do with injecting bentonite, but part of the problem almost is such a slow leak that it's not like it's going to suck bentonite in and self-seal.
Yeah, there's no rate here, and that's a problem. So it's hard to find.
Okay, I'm done. I was just thoughts.
This is Dale.
Go ahead, Dale.
Mark, are there any examples of actually filling it in with the solid salt? Any caverns like you're talking about?
No, sir, not yet. That's there have been some papers written and some thoughts around it, and how you would have to slurry that material and how you would get it down hole and make sure it got some sort of compaction on it, things like that. But right now it's strictly theory.
Yeah, it would take forever to get that filled up.
It would take a while.
Yeah.
But I have a brine pond full of salt, so.
Yeah, right. I guess one question, I think Rick brought it up. Can you, if you've got shut-in status or TA status on these wells, with injecting the brine just to maintain the pressure, would that violate our rule for re-entry without a permit? Or can you just, like Rick I think suggested, maybe that could be part of the motion to allow that to be done?
Well, that was part of the request, and that we be able to maintain that pressure.
Commissioner Nations, that was my suggestion, was to, because he's in front of the commission now asking for this, has identified the problem now, is that in coming to a decision, the commission take into consideration the necessity of putting more brine in just to maintain appropriate PSI so that we don't end up with a cave-in, and that is of some concern. But if we could have Mr. Thompson outline now the steps he takes every few weeks to ensure integrity, My suggestion would be to allow him to perform that on the well, but nothing more. And any re-entry into the well or any other workover or other work to be performed, he would have to come back to the commission based upon Art 12-7-125.
Yeah, but this would really not be a re-entry.
No, it is
You
not.
wouldn't be putting new tools down there.
No.
You'd just be pumping brine down a pipe.
And honestly, all we're trying to do is keep a positive pressure, something greater than zero. We don't want a lot of pressure on the thing.
And of course, there's the other piece too, Dale, with regard to trying to pump salt back in to potentially heal it.
That in thinking about it, that may require at least a notice and coming back to
I would
the commission.
probably want to come discuss that with you guys.
We would really appreciate it, actually.
Is there any other questions? Hearing no questions, is there any motions?
Frank, why don't you do this one?
Let me,
Well, I would move to approve shut-in status for C3 and C5 wells with the provision that the operator be allowed to add brine as necessary to maintain pressure.
I would like to propose a modification to that, that we're limited to 5 years on how long we can give this approval, and then you'd have to come back before us again.
Right.
But my suggestion would be that we change that to would it be better if it was every 3 to 4 weeks, or would it be better, as Dale said, as needed?
I would just say as needed, because we've gotten them to lower the pressure as much as possible without going to zero, so it's legal a little less.
I would make two proposals to your to modify your motion, Dale. One, that we extend this for 5 years, and two, that we also allow them to do their testing.
Can I ask for clarification? Testing in regards to determining if they need to add more brine or not to maintain that pressure?
That is correct.
Let me clarify. The testing that we wanted to do was another MIT to confirm that it is still leaking towards the cavern and not up. We haven't done anything since 2011, and so it was my intent to.
When do you anticipate doing the MIT?
Whenever if you guys give me permission, I'll have it done in
ready to go.
a month or two. We've got funding for it. So.
Did you want to include it in this order?
I think we should. Dale, I suggest we put this into the MIT into this motion. Discussion?
Well, that's another item on the agenda,
Yeah, that's,
pressure testing.
I know it is. I'm just thinking that we could put this all into one piece.
All right, I'm for that.
Dale, do you want to modify then your motion to include those items?
Okay. All right. I move to amend my motion to approve the shut-in status for wells C3 and C5 with the provision that necessary testing and addition of brine be maintained to be approved to maintain cavern pressure as needed.
And the MIT and...
and a period for 5 years.
Okay, and the MIT as well?
Yes. That I said, yeah, necessary pressure testing.
Okay.
includes the MIT.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Dennis.
Do you need this for C5 also?
We just recently did
pressure
one.
testing?
We just recently in 2017 did one, so
Right.
I'm comfortable with that one.
Well,
It's just been long
suggesting
enough. with C3.
Read, right, but let's make sure the minutes say that the motion was for C3
For
as far as
C3,
adding the
right.
brine.
Yeah, for C3.
I think that was allowing you to do it, not requiring.
Mhm.
Yeah, oh, definitely be allowed,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not necessary that we do it, but it's just.
Do you want to include it for both wells?
It's my
Do you want to include
wish
it
that
for
we
both
did
wells?
at least have the opportunity.
Yeah,
if we want
why
to
not?
do it.
That's my thought.
we can just include it for both wells, and then
Okay.
just
No, that's fair.
makes it simple.
Can I ask a question on the procedure in 5 years? Now, if I come back before the commission, do I need to have another test or submit for permission for another test before I come back and get it done? Is that how that would?
I believe it's required by rule.
Because it's a.
Yeah, that would be a reentry.
Because it's a TA or SI situation, it's not like the other wells where you're operating them all the time.
Right, so, but would I submit a
Proactive with
sundry?
us, I think, is the.
I would think he would, wouldn't he apply for an extension at that point?
That I would also be required to do any retesting or anything at that point, but that would be up to you guys to determine that. How is that?
Rick is checking
I'm reading it right now.
right now.
It's a question of I'm looking at R127125C. If the integrity of the well casing is in question, the commission may require the operator to. That's a may, not a shall. My suggestion at that time is you contact staff administration, Dennis Turner, and begin a conversation probably 6 months before to determine the current status, if there's any additional testing that's going to be required.
Probably nothing's changed, it's probably. Okay.
And that way, we end up with a commission who has a better idea of where you are.
Right.
So if you're going to come back in, we have a better understanding of your data.
Understood.
It seems to me that the pattern that your consultants follow with the other 9 cavern wells, you can follow with this, is for being proactive and sending me sundry notices and heads up. I've been getting stuff like that from your folks in the February, March timeframe for work that they do in, I guess, May. It needs to be enough advance warning so I have time
Right.
to slip it on the agenda for the
Sure. Well,
closest
and
meeting.
I sent you this one, is our consultants typically won't handle a matter like this.
Oh, they
for
won't?
us.
Oh,
No,
okay.
I have
Well, you can follow that pattern, is what I'm
Okay,
saying.
we'll do the same thing.
Rick said 6 months, but I think that's probably far beyond your planning horizon, but 3 months
Yeah,
or a little bit less.
We plan 10 years out, so for all
Okay.
of this work.
The reason we say that is because these meetings are held every 6 weeks,
Yeah.
and so we're trying to get, even 12 weeks, that's about 3 months.
Yeah.
So that we have enough lead time that we all have a chance to look at it.
Awesome. Okay.
And if necessary, come before the board, get approval before you take a step, rather than having you come at the last minute and say, wait a minute, I need this approval.
Sure.
Right, yeah, rushing me a week before the meeting and saying, I gotta have this now, and can we talk about it, maybe I get it on the agenda, and then we find out that.
We'll put this on our regulatory calendar and get it started well ahead.
Okay.
Dale?
Yes,
Well, now just a moment. Is there any other discussion on Dale's amendment to his motion?
I never got a second.
I know you didn't. You have the motion down on what he, or do you need any clarification?
We can maybe do it in the full because there was a lot of introductions.
Dale, I hate to say this again, but could you, just for clarification?
Yeah, I'll try it again.
Thank
I
you.
move to amend my motion to approve. Now I have a question. Are we talking about shut-in status or temporary abandonment?
Shut-in status.
Shut-in status.
Capable
Okay,
production.
that's defined, right?
Yes,
Yes.
it is. 127101 defines it.
And that qualifies because it's been determined that there's some beneficial use for this well?
Yes, it means a well that is capable of production in paying quantities, is completed as a producing well, and is not presently being operated. So
Okay.
it appears to fall within the definition of shut-in status.
All right, I start over again.
All right.
I move to amend my motion to approve shut-in status for C3 and C5 injection wells with the provision that the operator be allowed to add brine as necessary to maintain pressure and to conduct any pressure tests that are necessary to maintain the cavern stability
For what period?
for 5 years.
Okay. And that included testing, didn't it, what you just said? Okay, and the
Yes.
MIT. Okay, I second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Oh,
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. you have your approval.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate
Thank you
your
for
time.
coming.
Absolutely.
Good presentation.
Thank you. Moving on to item 4, Ranger Development. Our first item on this list is we've already approved a motion for but in our previous meeting, but what we didn't have was the start date for that motion. And I'll read from the agenda here. Dates when active activities suspended, the Commission shall discuss, consider, and possibly vote to assign individual start dates for temporary abandonment or shut-in status. April 12, 2019 meeting for each well previously approved. The subject wells are listed in Table 1. Next page, the Commission shall also discuss the current status of 33-3 PD.
And before Tony starts, may I inquire, Tony, do you have this table, correct? So when we start looking at the dates, we'll be looking at common dates.
On the screen?
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, that was in the public agenda.
Welcome, Tony.
I have one correction on that table before we proceed. For the 34-2 PD state, there's an error of 1 year there. That expiration date should be 2023 instead of 2024.
34-3.
No, 34-2
34-2 PD Pineda.
PD. Just a typo probably.
2020,
You talking about my memo? Or you talking about
the second one from the,
The memo with the table in it is what I'm looking at.
Oh,
I got it right here.
Yeah,
34-2 should be 23 instead of 24. I see.
the second line from the bottom.
Yeah.
and that should be, what's the date?
Should be 12/29/2023.
The table in the agenda is slightly different than what you had in your memo. Okay.
Okay. Got it. Thank you, Dale. Tony, would you proceed?
Could I ask for clarification on 23? I mean, there was a typo, I think, it had 1 instead of 12/29, but it was 2018, he said it's now
Yeah.
2023.
So what I'm looking at is
It can't be.
34-2 PD state. I've got a date of last activity is 1/29/2018. If you add a 5-year onto that, you would get you to a 1/29/2023.
Okay.
That's a recommended expiration date.
For the future, okay.
Yeah, that's in a separate memo.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What's on the screen is the date of last activity. So you had 5 years of that.
Okay. Please proceed.
Okay. I guess the place to start would be Dennis added the date of last, the TD date to the list. I think the intent was for, that TD date is actually for another discussion that we have about the confidentiality, is that correct? Okay, so we're actually just dealing with the date of last activity. What we did, I went in and with the recommendation of Dennis, tried to pick the oldest date, not the most current date when we actually had activities in the well, but to go back to when we actually had main activity, i.e. when we finished the completion or stimulation activities in a well or production shut-ins or something. So the dates that have been presented here, date of last activity, we think are probably would be the oldest dates and provide the shortest amount of time before we need to come back to the commission asking for or to do works or to extend the shut-ins on those. Do we need to go through you want me to go through every date or on the wells, or We just request that those dates be approved as the last activity plus 5 years for the shut-in or temporary abandonment status on the applicable well.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, a comment.
Proceed,
I think we should proceed on the dates as presented in the table. These have been researched by the staff, by Dennis, and confirmed, I think, by Rick. So I think we can handle all of those with one motion.
any discussion on this? Any issues?
My suggestion, I'm looking at a memorandum that Mr. Turner provided that added one additional column, which was the recommended expiration date. From just simply math point of view, Dennis took the date of last activity and added 5. My suggestion would be to adopt that matrix as the finding of the commission, because it would set out the exact dates. No, I don't think we need to go through every single well now. We're just setting timelines in a fairly simplistic mathematic mode.
I'm going to make a motion that we approve this and use the table that has been set out in the memorandum for the expiration dates.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on to the next item. Temporary abandonment, request 4 additional wells. Dennis, do you want to talk about this?
It refers to Table 2. This is an additional request that Ranger has. The last time we met, Tony, make sure I say this correctly. The last time we met, these 4 wells that are up for requested TA status now weren't outside of their 60 days. And it's been 6 weeks, so now the commission needs to approve the TA status for the 4 wells that are on the screen there at the top now. It's the same thing, date of last activities identified there, when they completed total depth.
How many years is he asking? Tony, let me ask, how many years are you asking for on the table 2 for TA status? I mean, for shut-in status?
For the 1-10, we would ask for at least 3 years. For the next wells, the 27-1, 33-1, 34-1, we request at least till the end of the year, or 1 year, just to make it simple, if we want to.
So you don't,
Or the up to 5 years, however, whatever's easiest for y'all to, do. We don't.
I think we should grant 5 years. There's no point in messing around with 1 year, which might not work.
you gotta come back in a year and get another Mother May eye from us, so I'd just say give 5 years now, and you have to come back and request re-entry, so you have to come back for that anyway, but stuff happens, and it might be 18 months.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Nations, I agree with you. Commissioner Farburn?
Yeah, I'm fine with a blanket 5-year
Okay.
period.
Do I have a motion on this one? Dale?
Yeah, okay. I move that we grant, what is it we're granting? I'm just lost here.
Shut-in status.
Yeah. That we grant shut-in status.
You want TA status?
I think it has to be per the definition.
Can we take a step back?
One second.
Let me ask a
Yeah,
follow-up
let's
question.
figure this out. What is it we're granting?
Tony, from the definitions of shut-in versus temporary abandoned, do these 4 wells meet the requirements or the definition of temporary abandoned or shut-in? Have they ever been capable of production? We'll just go right back to the...
There are 2 of the wells, the 27 and the 27-1 NS and the, no, excuse me, in that group of 4 wells, the 27-1 NS is capable of producing now, as we speak.
It's a completed well.
It just has been completed.
Okay, so that's an SI, shut in.
But, yeah.
The other three then are currently, they're not capable of
Can I ask
production.
you further clarification though? There's no pipeline, so it can't produce. So do
In terms
we?
of capable of production.
Okay, is good enough? Okay, all right.
So
And
the other three then would be temporary abandoned.
You could argue that it's not capable of production because there's no pipeline. In fact, that's what Kinder Morgan has presented to the commission in the past about temporary abandonment for all their CO2 wells because they have no pipeline.
And
It's splitting hairs, I'm
Yeah.
just pointing out.
I know, thank you, Dennis. So let's just call them all temporary abandoned, then it's on the cusp.
The effect is the same, he gets what he needs.
Yeah.
Okay, I move that we grant temporary abandonment status for the Ranger 1-10A NS, the Ranger plus the Ranger 27-1 NS, and the Ranger 33-1 NS, and the Ranger 34-1 NS for a period of 5 years.
Any discussion on Dale's motion?
And we're talking about 5 years from the date of the last activity.
Outlined in the table.
Yeah,
No.
I'm fine.
Okay, I second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any abstentions? Any nays? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay. Your confidentiality request, 4C.
For that, we need table 1 and 2 to combine. I'll try to see if I can make that come up on the screen together. Screen promises. That was the reason for the total depth, data total depth there. Okay, is that readable enough for folks on the room?
Go ahead, that's good.
Okay, so we raised the question of how many wells and what type of information could be included in the confidentiality. I think we would request that we have a kind of some clarification of the rules if possible. I don't know if we can do that today, if you'll need to review them, but let me go ahead and start. In Rule 12-7-121C1, it's the paragraph entitled Confidential Records. For the record, the Commission shall keep the completion report and all well information required by this section for any well drilled for oil and gas in unproven territory confidential for 1 year after the drilling is completed, unless the operator gives written permission to release the information at an earlier date. The Commission shall provide notice to the operator 60 days before confidential records become subject to public inspection, and at the operator's request, extend the confidential period for 6 months to 2 years from the date of the request if the Commission finds that the operator has provided credible evidence that disclosure of the information is likely to cause harm to operator's competitive position with respect to unleased land in the vicinity of the well. We would ask the first thing that be addressed or considered with regard to that rule is what is the position of the Commission with regard to the wording of become subject to public inspection. Is this intended to be a notice 60 days prior to the end of the 12-month period? Or is it supposed to be interpreted as 60 days prior to releasing records because of a request from an outside party to review them?
And you're asking for legal. The problem is, Tony, I only got this a couple.
No, I know.
And so I would like a little more time to read it.
Sure.
And address it next time.
We have no problem at Ranger. If we want to put this on the next agenda, we would just request that the information still maintain the confidentiality until such time as we kind of work through this. The second item for the along those same lines, is the commission required to give written notice that the records are to become subject to public inspection? This is only relevant if the intent of the language that I just read is that they must give 60-day notice prior to the release based on a request to review the records by someone else. I think if you read it, it's kind of like, why would the rule have the requirement of giving 60 days notice if it's very clear that it's just 1 year from the date of drilling? What we would, and this all rolls into trying to define the date when we're actually going to apply, the additional period that we're going to request for shut-in. The concept might be that, okay, we're past the 12 months from a drilling standpoint, but information hasn't been released or nobody has requested it, and then if you give us notice that you're going to release it, then we can come forward and request that it be held confidential for an additional period. As opposed to if it's just from the 12 months, well, that sets a whole different date. We're past the 12 months and didn't get a chance to request. If that's the interpretation. So we just need the interpretation clarified, and then I think it'll be very easy for all of us to set the dates of when or what can be put into confidentiality. That is not, of course, addressing then as to which wells and what information, which I think once we clarify the first parts, then we can kind of dive into wells that are dual completed in zones and or in unproven territory.
Let me just say that one of my difficulties now is I'm trying to read this, and I would rather have time to sit down and discuss and think about it myself a bit more rather than making a quick decision. And I would appreciate if we could maybe wait the 6 weeks to the next meeting, but it's up to you.
I move we table this motion till the next meeting. This item, I mean.
Dale?
Yes.
I would propose a modification to that. I'm fine with the tabling of it, but that we also maintain the confidentiality until we voted at the next meeting. So
I accept that motion, that amendment.
Any other discussion?
Which isn't specifically these points, but in a general way for you guys, if we grant them confidentiality, can it be granted on the basis of an area rather than listing all, continually having this list of drill holes? Can you do it on the basis of that?
From a strict reading, I don't think you can, because it says for any well drilled for oil and gas in unproven territory.
Okay. So we're stuck going through this whole list?
I think so.
Okay, it was just a question.
This is just a discussion, comment on all of this. We've got a motion on the table. It hasn't been seconded yet, but before we do, I think for future consideration for the next meeting that we, for those wells that are not not proven territory, that we grant an extension of 2 years, starting 1 year after the date that they were entered. And I think that we should look at that and talk about that at our next meeting. Saying that, I second Dale's motion for Tony.
Too late for a further question. To get in and actually address, for y'all to consider this, to actually get in and address on a well whether something should or shouldn't be confidential, can we do this outside of a public hearing in an executive session so that we can actually get into details and talk about why we really think something should be confidential or not in a hearing?
Give me 2 seconds.
But you think about that one for next time too. So.
We have a motion and it's seconded to table this until the next meeting with maintaining confidentiality until we voted on this. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, that motion carries. It is tabled till the next meeting. Item D, 4D, 33-3 PD permit number 1220. Dennis, do you want to fill us in more on this?
I'll just start by saying that Ranger wants to deepen this well. It's a little confused. I guess it's completed at around 900-foot depth. Surface casing been set, and there's open hole below it, but they want to come back and basically deepen this well. Tony, can you explain that? I put in the second bullet there on the screen in the agenda the fact that it was originally drilled in, or it was drilled, I guess, in the summer of 2017 or early 2018. The commission was approached by Ranger asking for shut-in status of 2 wells, and one of them was this one, which had a little problem with the cement job, the cement casing. I understood from Ranger's presentation that they felt they needed to go back in and squeeze some more cement there to secure that casing, and I had a look at the cement bond log, and it doesn't look like a very good job, but I don't have anything in my records that indicates they ever did go back and do the cement squeeze on the casing, and their shut-in status was only to begin after the cement job was done. So I have to turn it over to Tony to fill in the history gaps that I had.
Okay, so the well was drilled at the end of 2017, December 2017. It reached a total depth of 963. Surface casing had been set and cemented at 530. When the cement bond log was run, it indicated that the cement did not come back to surface, and so we agreed that we would, before doing anything, we would actually go in and top out the cement on the backside. I believe the order was to get down to the maximum depth possible and top out the cement was the way it was recommended on the original deal. Our contractor, we thought, would be back sooner than what he had. He has not done that yet, and that would be done before we do any other activities in the well to deepen the well. The intent now is to deepen the well from 963 feet. They want to go down and test the supine. There's potential show. We're offsetting the KM10 well, and potential total depth down to the Fort Apache is approximately 2,500 feet. So we're requesting permission to re-enter the well, resume activities, works, and re-enter the well to deepen the well.
When do you propose doing the deepening?
We expect that that they'll be remobilized sometime in June to do the job.
Discussion? Dale, Commissioner Nations, any?
No, I don't think so. We've talked about this before, and there apparently was some issue with the rig being available then, and so we've gone past that situation. Is there a rig available to do this now within the near future?
My understanding is yes. The rig's out there. He was rounding up some more drill pipe to go to 2,500. So he now says he's got enough to go do that.
A few minutes ago.
I move that we grant approval to deepen the Ranger 33-3 PB well as requested.
I second that motion.
I suggest maybe we can finish that cement job first.
Before I'm going to withdraw my second and ask for a modification of that, that requires finishing the cement work before he does the additional drilling. Is that okay with you, Dale?
Yeah, I missed that point, but sure.
So do you want to restate your motion then?
Why don't you just go ahead and restate it?
Okay, I will. I move that we grant Ranger for 33-3 PD authorization to go back in and deepen the well, contingent upon finishing the cement work needed.
I second it.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Say nay. Nothing. Hearing none. Any abstentions? None. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 5, Suncor Development. Dennis, do you want to brief us on this?
So I've been approached by a representative from a home builder up in the Luke Air Force Base area to basically get a waiver to the requirement that a surface marker be staked out at a plug and abandoned well. This is a particular location that was stratigraphic tests similar to some of the other Suncor wells that you folks voted on a year ago, I guess. But the difference is that this well has been plugged and abandoned, and it looks like a pretty good job. The cement job goes from surface down to 220, and then there's a second plug down 1,000 feet. Just for completeness of information, I mentioned that. So I think that there are folks here from the home builder that would like to speak to us further. Maybe the best thing is just to turn it over to, is Randy Smith here? Are you going to be the one to talk?
Yes, please.
Please come forward and introduce
I'll
yourself.
let you
State your name.
give the background and details.
Well, I'm Randy Smith, professional engineer with geotechnical testing inspections, and we've been hired by K. Hovanian to research what we can do with this well marker that's out there. They are in the process of purchasing the Luke Landing subdivision. It's fully platted and approved, and we found your well marker out there on the site. In conversations with what we would like to do is to we understand a well marker has to remain, but we want to put a subterranean marker in place so that it's not in our project, not exposed. That was done previously for Suncor. We saw some literature on that where we dug down 10 feet, cut off without disturbing the pipe, cut it off, put a concrete cap in there with the marker indications of all the well and information surveyed in. Marker dyed aggregate material and compacted back and document the location of the well.
Any questions?
I have a quick one.
Go ahead.
In regards to documenting location of the well, is that, my thought would be for a recording at the Maricopa County Assessor's Office. And the reason I say that is if you have a very large development going in, I would like it to turn up, have a depository for it, so to speak, so that in the future, if they need digging in the area, we have a pretty good idea of where it is.
Yeah, I'll speak. I'm Chuck Chisholm with K. Hovanian Homes, 20830 North Tatum Boulevard in Phoenix. So we could probably record an easement, so that'd be recorded in the recorder's office. Would that be sufficient to what you're looking for?
I'm not even suggesting an easement because I don't think we need access. My goal is that either Hovanian or someone else out there who is developing, let me give an example. Let's say that a year you don't build out and a second builder comes in, buys up your property and says, now I'm going to build homes. And he goes, where did this well come from?
Which is exactly what we said when we entered escrow.
And that's where I was hoping to get something in the recorder's office, because I assume any subsequent purchaser will at a minimum go through and search title. My goal is to have this well pop up, marked somewhere so we don't strike it.
And I would say we would want to do that regardless of whether or not the commission wanted us to do that, because for basically the same reason.
Yeah, I don't think, unless the commission thinks differently, I'm not sure an easement's necessary. We're not going to go out there as a state or as the commission inspect or do anything. We just want to make sure that wherever this wellhead sits, even subterranean, that there's some type of identifying marker within a book somewhere or depository, rather than I still like the idea of the dye in the field and saw cutting.
Yeah.
but there's something on record that will pop up for subsequent purchasers.
I'm open to any suggestions you have. Like I said, I thought the easiest thing would be to either a covenant or restriction that we would record, or an easement, something like that.
Notice it's some type of document that gets
Yeah.
recorded. The problem with having an easement is someone has to sign it because you have to give that right to somebody, and I'm not sure the state nor this commission wants to start signing easements right now.
Understood.
But some type of document that allows the coordinates to be put into the recorder's office.
Dennis, could you describe what we gave on the last one and what the methods were of marking it?
Okay, well, first, I think I forwarded you one of the letters. Were you generally okay with I think the 11 steps that were outlined in there? Some of them don't apply.
Yeah, obviously the plugging ones don't apply,
Right,
but all the
that doesn't apply.
marking ones do.
But
yeah.
do you review that and you're generally okay with that? Because that's the kind of proposal that we're coming forward for you folks. Did you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Case? So what we required before was these other wells had not been plugged and abandoned, and there was a considerable amount more work to do. They still excavated down to 10 feet, and they went in and did their plug and abandonment. And then they set a metal plate at 10 feet, covered it with granular material infused with dye that hopefully was going to be immobile and not leach out. And then buried it back to surface and recorded that location by GPS from a licensed surveyor with Maricopa County. The concern I have with any of these wells, it's very unlikely, but I won't say it's impossible, that something might happen in the future and these wells start leaking saline water or whatever. We may be talking, we have to think in geologic time here, not in human time. We might be thinking 100 years, 200 years from now. If that location is covered over by a house or some large building, recreation area, they may not be able, if they don't know the location of it, they're not going to be able to figure out perhaps where that leak is coming from or whatever activity is going on down there. But if they have access to it and not have to demolish a building or open up somebody's living room so they can set up a drill rig to read her well, it would be my preference that it be, you were talking about an easement. I guess I don't fully understand what an easement is, but I'm thinking it needs to be open space that's accessible or something. If you go build a house over something like this, will the homeowner know that it's there and understand the risk that there might be someday to re-enter that well? I don't know.
Yeah, one of the things, and we did not, I don't believe we stated it the last time, and I think we need to be clear that there should be no structure built over it.
A lot of states have that mandated. I mean, that is, it's not necessarily in our law written that way, but there's quite a history. The United States is replete, in fact, probably around the world, replete with history of people building over wells and later ruined the day they did that. Now, this was a stratigraphic test, and it's highly unlikely that there's going to be oil or natural gas leaking out of it, because I don't think there's anything down there like that. But there's always stresses and activities going on in the subsurface that we don't always understand or know about, and you start messing with it by punching holes that cut across a lot of lithologies. You know, you just got to be prepared and mitigate accordingly what you can.
So now, I guess, having talking through this, first of all, we are not planning on building any structures on top of it. And that's originally why I was coming here thinking maybe an easement would be the best thing.
Well, what exactly would an easement, you didn't seem to like the idea that...
Easement means that they give right, it's an easement, it can either be an easement for years or an easement indefinite. It gives rights of access or certain rights to other parties. My typical use of an easement is if the ADEQ puts a well somewhere on private property. As a general rule, I try to get a property owner to give an easement. So every time ADEQ wants to go back and sample, they don't necessarily have to go to the property owner and get a license or other mechanism to enter the well. They go, they give 3-day notice, and they enter the well. The problem is someone else has to hold that easement.
So here's another suggestion then. We could do a restriction, kind of like CC&Rs, where we just put in there a covenant that nothing will be built on top of it.
That's up to you,
Kind of thing.
but I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think that would be appropriate
That
to
satisfies me, I think.
ask that too in the future to have that.
And the other thing, I still would like the coordinates recorded somewhere within your CC&R.
That could be within that.
I would really appreciate that.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I have a comment on it.
Yes,
Go ahead, Commissioner Nation.
Now, a land plat would be developed for the housing development, is that right?
That's correct.
So each lot would be identified, and so could it be determined or mandated that whichever lot would overlie this well, there would have to be some sort of a declarative statement that that well exists there?
That would be the purpose of the CCNRs would be the declarative statement, because CCNRs have to be recorded to be effective against all subsequent landowners.
Yeah.
And quite
So that
honestly,
would be covered by the CCNRs.
yes, and quite honestly, I assume Hovanian doesn't want to build someone's house over this, have to destroy someone's house and rebuild it for them. It doesn't seem like good business.
That's correct, yeah. And so just for, the background on this, the subdivision was previously platted by our seller. It's been platted and engineered. We entered escrow and purchased these platted lots when, in our discovery period, we discovered this marker. So luck would have it that the marker is actually in a place where there won't be a home built. There's actually already a setback that this well is within. And I guess we just lucked out there. So
They can't build a house.
It's
very
good you
well.
came today, because I didn't know that.
yeah.
One additional note, that when you cut this off, it needs to be a saw cut.
Okay.
Yeah, the reason for that is that you get out there and just start jerking on the thing and wrap a chain around and start pulling, doing this and that and the other, you're going to disturb the seal that the well is intended to have, the casing with the formation and inside the casing with the cement. So you want to just gently dig down around it and get some kind of saw that will cleanly cut the concrete, the cement, and the casing as well. And then put this plate over it that just identifies it in case some nitwit does drill down there or dig down there, they're going to hit the plate also.
Okay.
And it's marked, it has to be marked with the same kind of information that the surface marker is required to have.
Right.
Which I will be sending a letter and it'll spell out what the citation is for the rule and so on and so forth. So it's just a due diligence thing for everybody's safety.
Okay.
Yeah, but the fact that it's in an offset area does not obviate the reason for putting the location of this on the in the CCNRs. I mean, it sounds like they were talking about it since it's in an offset area anyway. They don't have to do anything more. But I think it needs to definitely be identified in the land plat, in the subdivision, and included in the CCNRs that exists, and what lot it would be existing on.
But you're not suggesting that the surface markers stay there, are you?
Oh no, not at all. But it should be marked in any sales pitches that old well is there, even though it's buried by 10 feet to the top of the well. In other words, if they bury it, you can't just forget about it.
Yes.
It still has to be located in the the office. What is the office where they have to report it?
The recorder's
office.
Recorder's office.
Okay.
So it's definitely going to have to be located in that way. But again, it needs to be determined. The information needs to be public that exists for some possible purchaser of that property. I'm just rambling, so I'm not objecting to anything.
Commissioner Firebrand, you have,
Dennis has already described what needs to be done.
okay.
Yeah. Do we need to give any thought on this to, I mean, we're sort of saying in case you need to go back in to that well, but that requires getting equipment into that place, that it also somehow sets aside enough space for equipment and access for equipment. Do we need to get into that at all, or are we just noting it's there?
I think
just noting it's there is adequate.
Okay.
The fact that there's no structure on it, I'm relieved to hear that, but
Well, there is another thought too. If people are planting trees and roots and things
Well,
like
that would be
that.
the reason for 10 feet,
Yeah.
unless y'all think it should be deeper. I wouldn't recommend any shallower than 10 feet.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'm just a little experienced. I examined a site in Sedona years ago where a sinkhole had developed right in the middle of a trailer park. There was a sinkhole about 8 feet across and about 30 feet deep. And of course there it was due to a cavern, a subsurface cavern that is not going to exist in the Luke area. But it's the sort of thing that could happen at the surface to affect development, housing development. That's, again, just rambling.
Well, the salt is a lot shallower at this location too. From the well file, it appears the top of salt is around 890 feet or 900 feet, whereas the other Suncor wells that we discussed a year ago, top of salt was closer to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 feet. I can't remember exactly, but considerably deeper.
I'm going to make a motion that we allow the Suncor development number 1-02, permit 908, to be cut off at 10 feet below the surface with the appropriate markings that we have mentioned, and that Dennis will send them, and that the CC&Rs be recorded at the county office. Discussion on my motion?
And I have one last suggestion, is that you take into consideration Dennis's 12 points that will be then sent out to Hovanian in a letter, correct, Dennis?
Yes.
And I would include the 12 points in that motion that Dennis would be sending out. Any discussion on my motion? Seconds, is there a second? We have a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, your motion is approved.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 6, Suncor Copper Eagle number 1-24, permit number 909, Merritt Partners. Dennis, do you want to?
So this is a follow-up, which I alluded to with the previous Suncor job we were just talking about. A year ago, the commission approved the plug and abandonment of the 1-24, formerly Copper Eagle, and the 1-19 Copper Eagle wells, given permit number for that one. And I'm thinking in researching the files, I guess it wasn't clear, but I know that it was discussed openly and that the operator was present when we discussed the need to record both of these well locations when their subsurface work was done and the surveyor was done with his work and need to be recorded with the county recorder. The Copper Eagle 1-19 was done and recorded properly, and I received a copy of that document. It's in the well file. But I never received any evidence that the 1-24 was recorded per the direction given in the letter. It's possible that there was some communication fell through the cracks. I had a conversation with the Vice President of Merritt Partners this week, and he assured me that he would get me that document, and I asked him if he could give me some evidence that they're moving on that by today, because it might change what I was going to recommend to the commission, but I haven't received any communication from them. So it's hanging fire for close to a year when this well should have been recorded with the county recorder, and it hasn't been. So I'm asking the commission to consider some measures that we should get Merritt Partners' attention. I don't know if you want to do some kind of formal enforcement thing or just a more serious tone letter that we mean business when we say we want you recorded and send a copy to the commission. My knowledge, it hasn't been done. If it's been done, my apologies to Merritt. It's just that I never got that document.
What's council's opinion?
My suggestion is that we allow Merritt 1 week to provide information. You said you've been in touch with him. At the end of that week, that my office will write a letter following up as counsel for the Oil and Gas Commission, and we'll see. And in regards to overall enforcement, that we table this till next meeting. Let's see if a little pressure from the Attorney General's office gets us what we're looking for. That's my suggestion.
Any other discussion? I move that we table this till the next meeting and have council, we wait 1 week, and if not, we don't have a response, council send a letter to them to urge them to move forward.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? No. Any abstentions? The motion carries. Let us move on to the next item on the agenda, number 7. Ongoing discussions of future needs of the commission. I asked that this be put in there because of the pieces that we're working on with the legislature right now, and with the idea that that will be moved forward and approved, and what we need to do to coordinate with the DEQ on this to for instance, we want an updated website, the ability to do the have everybody register online and submit their reports online, to be able to do the GIS work that we needed, and I think we just need to put together a list of the things that we would like to have. One of the other discussions would be to that DEQ have a similar site so that it's menu driven, so that when people put in an application, here's the permits needed, here's who you have to go to if it's not just us, and move forward. So I'm asking for the input of the other commissioners to put together a list of what kinds of things we can coordinate with DEQ about, and their support to help us achieve these goals.
I'd like to bring up another item, which I think falls within this category. Remember the discussions that we had about the Attorney General Opinion 60-39?
Yes, that actually comes in a different area, Dale. That is with respect to the updates that we're doing with the AZOGCC, and wouldn't come into this category because this is just support from DEQ, not following into that category, from my opinion.
Oh, so this is only from DEQ. It's not other.
That is correct.
Future needs of the oil and gas company.
No, this is just the future needs that we need from DEQ.
Oh, I see.
Can I add a clarification, Steve?
Go ahead.
So, Dale and Bill, FYI, if you're not familiar with this, in statute it says that the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality shall supply administrative support, I think is the terminology.
Correct.
And administrative support is more than just me. There's other things like
We have a little problem right now because we're kind of getting off of our agenda.
Well, I mean,
just a minute, Dennis. I have a problem with that because we do fall under open meeting law. My suggestion is if we're going to do this in open meeting, it has to be on the next agenda. I certainly don't have a problem with moving it there, but it was not on the agenda here.
oh, well, Frank was asking for a list, so.
It's a list of, I think it's very specific. The issue having to do with whether administrative support or staff, it should come up under a different subject and should be properly noticed by proper meeting and public notice.
That confuses me.
Basically, you have to have it on a public meeting on an agenda, and you don't. And Frank, Commissioner Thorwald already described the ongoing future needs of the Oil and Gas Commission and the necessity of upgrading the software, hardware. It was not for part of a discussion on the role of the administration or the administrator. And my suggestion is if we want to have a public discussion on that, we put it back on calendar for a meeting in 6 weeks and proceed at that time.
Okay.
So, what's everybody's thoughts with regard to those support services, internet, and other types of things as I previously described?
Yeah, I think that's right. That's our main source of support now, and fortunately, the technical aspects of it are appropriate for what they do.
From that perspective, is there any other items in that category that we should be adding to our list?
What we're talking about is that somebody that wants to drill a hole can online get guidance on
the applications that they need to submit, and they can submit those applications online.
Okay, that's admirable.
And that they have the GIS, and it lists what other agencies they have to go to, and that we have the GIS support that we need to.
Yeah, that's admirable. That would be good. Yeah.
Any other items that we? Hearing none, let's move on to items 8. Report by the Oil and Gas Administrator.
2 wells are active or have been recently active from permits issued recently, or actually a year ago. Pollard Helium commenced their drilling out there, their 36-1, which is near the Adamana facility actually, and was out there and visited the site. I had some concerns about the ground disturbance, the extensive ground disturbance that Pollard did was really not necessary. Nobody else that's drilling for helium out there has been doing that. It's usually pretty minimal disturbance. So I've been in communication with the Surface Water Sections Inspector in regards to whether there should be a need for a construction permit or not. I don't know that they'll go anywhere, but I've also had an informal conversation with Pollard in regards to what his real needs are for constructing a pad out there. He's been giving me the daily drilling reports, which is good. Currently, they've suspended drilling until after the Memorial Day weekend. They're using the same drilling contractor that Ranger's using. In regards to Arizona Energy Products, I got confirmation that they're going to start drilling again and that they would actually be drilling on or about May 24th. Did that happen?
This is Jamie Hope with Arizona Energy Partners. We have moved the rig. The rig is moving on location. We had to do some additional road work that we didn't anticipate. So long weekend means we're hoping to start on Tuesday.
Are you planning to be out there at any time while it's drilling?
I won't be out there, but we have several people I can connect you with if you wanted to be on location.
I might like to be on location next week if you think people are going to be out there and actually drilling.
Yeah, luckily the rig is in New Mexico. It's fairly close, so it doesn't take long to get here.
It's still in mobilization then?
Yeah. Yeah, we have equipment on location. Road work's to be done.
So I'll get with you after the meeting.
Okay.
And those are the only 2 things I had.
Okay. Moving on to item 9, report by the chairman on status of rulemaking. I had asked Dennis to check on what the AZOGCC was doing since we've had some delays because of people leaving. And Dennis had communicated with them. Dennis, would you fill us in on that communication?
So I had a conversation with Larry Bengal, who is a member of the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission, and they had a little disruption in their process of trying to evaluate where areas need to be revised in our rules because one member of the commission has left their employ. I don't know if they retired or what. So they've been trying to actively recruit a replacement, which they have, somebody from the Oil and Gas Commission in Utah. And he indicated to me yesterday that he hopes they can get back together and start to address the first list of priorities that we gave them in a meeting we had with them back in September, which was detailed on the agenda at the time. So he's hoping he can get some feedback for us within the next few weeks, quote unquote, whatever that means. So they've been flat out with a lot of internal changes at the AZOGCC because they have new administration in place who director, and I think that's delayed them also.
Okay.
This is for the overall rule improvements and revisions.
And we have not heard from the governor's office back yet on the exceptions memo that you signed, Dale, Commissioner Nations. So as soon as we do, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Any other, I don't have anything else to say here, but anybody else? Okay, moving on to item 10, legislation affecting the Arizona Oil and Gas Commission. We, the piece that I was working on has been moving forward. As soon as the legislature finalizes the budget, we'll know. But at this point, I would say we're about 99% that what we're looking at is going to go through. So, FYI. That's the only thing I have at this moment. Is there anything else on item 10? Not hearing anything. Let's move on to item 11, call to the public. Is there anybody that would like to say anything? Please come forward, Tony.
Yeah, Tony Hines with Ranger. Just a question related to item 10. If for the next meeting, if maybe we could get an update on the status of primacy, obtaining primacy for the injection wells, indoor stimulation that the ADQ is going through to obtain primacy from the EPA, just to see where that's going. It's been going on for 2 years now, 1 year process. So, thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Is there anybody else that would like to say something? Hearing that, we'll move on to item 12, review and consideration of future agenda items. Is there anybody that would like to add anything that hasn't already been added?
Well, I'll bring up again that Attorney General Opinion 60-39. I don't know if we've resolved how we can go ahead and request a review of that. That would make it more relevant to modern day, to present times. Do we have that in the works, or do we want to keep putting it on the agenda?
That's going to have to go on an agenda, and it has to be subject to public meeting and this board requesting a review. And I can't guarantee it's going to happen. I can just tell you the steps to get there.
Well, I want us to try.
Again, all of that would have to be, any changes associated with that would have to be done through legislation, not by any edict or comment or statements from the AG's office.
I know that it should be our prerogative to request it.
Yes. So, what do you want to do, Dale?
I guess maybe I've been assured that it is. Well, I think I've been assured that there's no hope. Is that what I heard from Rick?
No, actually, what I suggested is it has to come. The board has to make the request.
Yeah, that's what I want to do.
In other words, you have to vote on it. The board itself votes to push it forward.
Yeah.
And then it goes for review. And I can't guarantee the AG's office is going to pick it up or not. I'm just telling you the steps it would take to get there.
All right. Well, let's take those steps. That's my opinion.
So put it on for approval by the board to submit to a request to the Attorney General's office.
Next agenda item. Future agenda items.
Future agenda items.
June 28th.
Okay, that'll be on our next agenda. Is there any announcements?
Oh, I want to go back to.
Oh, please.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
What are we going back to, Bill?
The previous one on.
Okay.
Just future agenda items, okay. And to me, it's, for example, when we've got this public notice and people are applying for temporary abandonment. If I were public, I don't really know what that means. You know, that some of these just real basic terms can be explained simply. And what I'm thinking I do in mining, I do technical reports for the Toronto Stock Exchange, and a lot of times you have just this format section where you explain what a gram per ton is, what a you know, that you're using metric tons or English tons. You know, just a very little simple to kind of set out, explain what the basic things are. And I wonder if somewhere, either online or on, you know, the paper things, just a little section to explain to the public what temporary abandonment, permanent abandonment, you know, very simple. So that when they say what they're applying for this, there's an explanation the public can understand of what they're applying for. And the point I'd like to bring up.
Actually, I think that fits under item 7.
Does it?
Because of things that we
Oh, okay.
could need, which would be putting
Can I
the terms
retroactively put it under
putting the
item
terms
7?
online. So,
Okay.
anything else
Under announcements or review?
under announcements?
Yeah, I have an announcement. I will no longer be the AG for the Attorney General's office for the Oil and Gas Commission. My role in the WRF program, which is a separate remedial program, has grown sufficiently that my boss has made a decision that WRF has kind of needs my attention more than the oil and gas does right now. You will be reassigned an Attorney General. My understanding, it'll be Jay Scardon, and he will most probably be at your next meeting in 6 weeks, and you'll move from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick, for your
Thank you,
service. We appreciate it very much. You've been a very big help to us. Any other announcements? In that case, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Are we going into executive session?
No.
No, nothing to do.
What?
No.
Oh, it's on the agenda.
I know, but we didn't need to do it. There was nothing to.
We don't need to discuss the duties and responsibility of staff administration.
We already did it.
We have that table that Rick submitted to us with the yellow highlights. I thought that's what that topic was.
If you want to discuss it, we can.
I'm not.
We
I'm
can.
not
I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. If you want to discuss it, we can do that.
I'm not insisting. I'm just saying that that was presented as part of the agenda. And if we're not going to do it, well, then I think we should at least acknowledge that that was prepared for us.
Yes, you're right. Thank you. Do we need to have a discussion on that? I think we're fine with that. We'll just, I think we've got that all covered already. So, thank you for bringing that to my attention, to our attention, Dale. Commissioner Nations. Again, I have a motion on the table that we adjourn, and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, Rick, very much.
Thank you.
So how's your tornado weather doing, Tony?